So, as discussed, this is from Telco to Techco, evolution of communication service providers in the cloud. I'm going to be taking you through to start some of our most recent research, talking around some of the key trends that we're seeing, some of the opportunities that we're seeing emerge, but also some of the challenges that service providers are facing and what they can do to really overcome them. So, looking forward at the kind of market of where it's come from and where it's going to, we started with this kind of viewpoint that the on-prem PBX was the way that people were communicating. It was voice only. It was fairly basic. There were not many interesting things you could do with it. And over time, we started moving to this model, which was going to the hosted IP PBX. The start of the cloud era, kind of mid-2000s, started off kicking off in that. And then probably around 2010 to 2012, we started seeing the growth of the UCaaS market, seeing the voice, video, messaging, other communications channels coming into this. And then over time, we've started emerging into this new world where there's CX, there's mobility, there's connectivity, there's new value-added services coming in, there's new things like AI coming in. And it's really starting to really change what a service provider needs to offer and moving beyond just selling UCaaS solutions. And as we'll talk through, the market has changed fairly dramatically over that time. If we're looking forwards at the market of where we are in terms of the installed cloud communications user base now and in the future, in the US market, at the end of 2023, we're at just under 50 million users. As we're moving to the end of 2028, 5 years on from them, we're going to be at over 65 million users. So pretty considerable growth over the next 5 years in the US market. And then we take that from a European perspective, the growth is even more phenomenal. We're at about 33 million users using a cloud communication solution in Western Europe. That's going to grow to around 56 million users by the end of 2028. So significant numbers of users coming into the market. And that represents a massive opportunity for everyone here looking at the market and going, well, how can we take advantage of that? What can we do to grow? How do we take a slice of that going forwards? One of the biggest challenges we see as this market's going to mature, though, is the shift between, are we going to compete? Are we going to start moving people from on-premise to cloud? But also, as we're reaching 2028 in a few years' time, we're going to start really competing with other UCaaS providers in the market. If we look at the data in 2021, 75% of new wins that service providers were saying was coming from on-premise PBXs moving to the cloud. When we ran this survey in the end of 2023, it was just under 50% of them were now moving from on-premise PBX, and the rest were from a competitor's UCaaS solution. So the big challenge here is you're competing UCaaS to UCaaS here now, and that's going to become more and more prevalent over the next few years. That means you're going to have a solution in place which is differentiated, which is something out the box, which you're going, well, how can I take this to market quickly, easily, and bring it to market? I think that's the biggest challenge I think service providers are going to face in the future is how do you differentiate your products? When we talk around the different communication strategies for providers, for businesses as well, this is from a study of 2,000 enterprises, IT leaders we did around their top priorities for communications. It's interesting to look AI and efficiency, using AI to drive efficiency and productivity comes up really highly in a load of different areas here. We're also seeing a reduction of costs coming up. Businesses that we're speaking to are looking at their ITs and telecoms infrastructure and go, well, how do we reduce our costs? That's obviously a key driver for this. But coming through higher and higher is the improving cybersecurity and compliance. This predominantly is coming through in larger organizations rather than smaller organizations. But it's definitely interesting to see that as AI is starting to get adopted, people at businesses and IT leaders are going, well, how do we use AI? How do we improve the security around AI? How do we improve compliance around AI as well, and what can we do to really benefit our users as we go through this? It's interesting when we look at some other markets like France and Germany. In France, providing better customer service comes up above AI. In all the other markets we looked at, that was really high up last year. That's been supplanted by using AI to drive efficiency, but still providing that better customer service has become really important. And in Germany, providing integration between fixed and mobile communications comes up really high. We see that quite a lot when we're speaking to our German customers and German service providers, that they're really looking at that integration between fixed and mobile communications as well. When we look at Microsoft Teams, one of the biggest things we get asked is Microsoft Teams going to take all of the user base here? Well, we don't believe that, and we see from our forecast that's not actually the case. At the moment, around 23% of the UCaaS users are using Microsoft Teams or voice enabling Microsoft Teams to deliver UCaaS solutions. That's going to grow to around 41% in 2028. The interesting thing, though, is that predominantly in the large enterprise sector. If you look in the SME, and we just did a study of around 45 different operators globally, they're still seeing a lot of struggle. They're still struggling to sell a lot of Microsoft Teams and voice enablement into Microsoft Teams into the SME. It's really where I would say all the other platforms are playing a lot bigger role. And you need to look for a platform that's going to really help you deliver into that space and make you successful down there. So we talked a little about some of the key trends in here. One of the big things is, how are we going to stand out in this competitive market going forward? What can you do as a service provider to make your business a success? One of the big things we see is diversifying portfolio. 62% of the service providers we spoke to said that they're planning to diversify their portfolio in the future to ensure the resilience and adaptability of their business. And we look at the areas of where they're doing this diversification of portfolio. A lot of it is around networking connectivity. It's around customer experience and contact center. It's around CPaaS. It's around infrastructure and data as well. Those areas for a lot of providers is, how do we bring those together? What do we do as a service provider to make sure they're successful? And 92% of the respondents say they're selling deals now which include one or two of these areas. One of the biggest ones that we see is around the contact center space, and it's fascinating to see how that's actually expanding and growing. We'll be touching on that a little bit later around CX and how that's an opportunity as well. But one of the things for service providers is this driving a lot more complexity. As you're bringing more and more products into your portfolio, you're looking at, how do we deliver AI to our customers and deliver AI for all those products? How do we deliver connectivity to all of our customers across mobile, across fixed, across all those different lines? How do we enable collaboration to our customers? Is that only an enterprise solution? Does that come into the SME? Is communications just around voice, or how do we enable video and other types of communication there as well? How do we ensure that our networks are compliant? How do we ensure that they're secure? And how do we deliver new versions of cloud networking to all of those customers? And the biggest challenge for you is that delivers complexity. But also for your end customers, they're having to go through all of this and they're looking to reduce that complexity. When we look at the different products and the complexity to deliver these, we see that starting at the top there, connectivity is probably the easiest thing to deliver. It's low margin, though. Most resellers have multiple providers. You start moving down towards more complex deals there. Business mobile and SIP trunking, fairly easy to deliver. Then you reach UCaaS, and a lot of people still say UCaaS is fairly easy to deliver, but it's pretty difficult now when we're looking at the kind of supporting customer interactions, going down vertical requirements, making sure that your platform is up and running with full uptime, making sure you're bringing new features out to your customers. And the fascinating bit around that CX, contact center, and AI is they're really quite complex products. And not all the partners that we're speaking to are selling those and looking at service providers to really help deliver that and deliver a whole solution through that. So very interested to see how that complexity changes. And a big thing that's facing the industry is, how do we bring the skills in to the service provider to help manage all of those? So speaking to service providers, they're looking at how they can differentiate. One of the key areas is what are they looking to do in terms of strategic initiatives? A big one is launching in new geographic territories. We also see an increased focus on digital and online sales, targeting new demographics, either moving to the enterprise, moving to SME, but also the last one is addressing new vertical segments. And we'll dive into a few of these as we go through. When we look at selling internationally, out of our latest service provider survey, 77% say that they sell internationally, but only 70% say, and 70% of those say they're selling into new markets. One of the challenges that comes up when doing that is really understanding how market landscapes differ in different countries. We obviously see in the UK and the US, penetration of cloud telephony is above 50%. You go to France and Germany, it's below 25%. So there's big variations between different countries. So understanding that landscape is really important. Making sure language and local presence is delivered as well. They're areas which we see huge challenges for. And we've seen a lot of companies trying to do international by going, well, it's going to be in English and that's going to work, and failing through that. Obviously, regulation is a huge one as well. How are we being regulated? What are the regulations from going into different markets? We're seeing a lot of regulation around numbering changing, but also regulations around AI and how data is being saved and stored. And all of that is changing quite rapidly. We also see massive changes in the channel. We see in the US, obviously, a lot of focus on the TSBs and agents, whereas in Europe, we see much more focus on resellers. And I think that dynamic there is really interesting when you're looking at going international and what they're doing there. Interesting then, when we spoke to the service providers, saying what 77% here are selling internationally, a tiny proportion of that actually have got feet on the ground in different markets. It's about 20% of them actually have feet on the ground in different countries, and usually that's one or two people in one different country. So really having that international footprint means that you've got to do it properly throughout there. When we talk about verticals as well, one of the interesting things we see of verticals is just over 60% of the service providers we spoke to say they got specific product sets and feature sets which are delivered to these verticals you can see on the left-hand side. So just over 60% have built propositions around healthcare, just over 40% around finance and banking and public sector and government, and that starts going down and down, as you can see here. Really interesting, 64% of those providers said that they've offered vertical integrated solutions. Some of those solutions that you're seeing on the left there haven't got any vertical integrations. They've just done a little bit around, okay, how do we target those? How do we build a proposition for healthcare? Maybe putting out a few case studies around that to really help build that from a marketing perspective. But only 64% of people have actually built any kind of vertically integrated solutions. And even more, 23% of those have got specific vertical sales teams. What we see in the future is service providers are going to have to start looking at how they can build out different product sets, different feature sets, and also build different marketing messaging and different propositions around different verticals to really differentiate as the market's becoming more and more consolidated around a few core platforms. And talking around the channel changes as well is a real issue. So on the left-hand side is where providers think that they're going to be selling most of their user base in the future. So MSP and reseller comes up very highly. This is weighted quite heavily towards the European market, as agents comes up very highly in the US. But certainly across Europe, MSPs and resellers, where a lot of our researchers focus, is more heavily weighted towards that. But there are big challenges within the channel. We've seen a lot of headcount reduction in some of the major vendors, and what that's driving is insufficient sales support from the vendors. We're seeing limited training being pushed through to partners and service providers because they're not being supported by their service provider, by their vendor partners, and also seeing more increased competition in those deals, as well as some of those vendors are going direct to their end customers and really making those deals more complex and more challenging to differentiate between the vendor and the service provider delivery as well throughout there. One of the biggest areas which we get asked about, and I wanted to talk about here, was around AI as well. So that last section was really talking around some of the challenges and the ways that different providers are differentiating. And I think AI is going to be one of those that people at the moment is really trying to differentiate around what they're doing. We're seeing AI being built into every single solution. So from a UCaaS perspective, AI is being used to enable better meeting experiences by using call recording, transcription, analytics. It's coming into hardware where they're using AI to find people in the room or block out different sounds and make sure that meeting experience is even better throughout there. We see a lot of focus on AI in the contact center. We're seeing it through virtual agents and chatbots. We're seeing transcription and summarization. So any of those agents who are talking on calls, instead of having to take their own notes, all of that transcription is being done, is being summarized and being logged in a manner that can be searched upon and really get the data out of that properly. We're also seeing agent performance and coaching, AI-assisted routing to really help deliver better performance for the agent. So no longer is the agent just following a script, but the agent's following a script that is listening and changing and adapting when we're hearing the customer's voice change from them being angry with sentiment analysis coming through, or really helping them understand what's the best way to support these customers with follow-up deals and things like that. We're obviously seeing across the security market and the networking market as well. But again, all of AI is what it's doing here is enabling these different features and functionalities, which have been around for quite a long time, to be better at what they're doing. We don't see people going, I'll have 4 AIs, please, and going out and looking specifically for AI. What they're doing is trying to buy features which are AI enabled. When it was interesting when we're talking to customers about purchasing AI, where they would look to get this from, a lot of them are already going and speaking to their existing suppliers and going, well, where can you help us with different AI-based solutions? What can you do around it? And yeah, most of those are going to speak to their own suppliers or going to speak to specialist AI suppliers as well. This is really around where they're looking at leveraging their own data sets and building AI models on top of this. 28% of them have been approached by new suppliers, and we've noticed a few companies emerging which are specifically selling AI products to help understand their data better and drive better insights out of their data. When we talk to end customers about where they're using or trialing, or where they're deploying or trialing AI, most of them are still using it in data analytics. IT security is driving a lot throughout that, and under 30% say they're using it within their communication tools at the moment. The perceived benefits that they're looking to drive out of there, obviously, as we spoke earlier, was around those efficiency and productivity gains. But as we see in communications, and especially in the contact center space, better data management, better analysis of that data comes up really highly there around the perceived benefits of using AI-powered contact center services. I think the areas around better talent management and reduction of human errors, we still haven't seen that massively yet. Maybe in the contact center a bit with the transcription and summarization, but around that last bit around personal customer service and experiences, I think that's a big step for the future that we're going to start seeing customers getting a better experience with AI, because AI is going to understand them a lot better with all the data that we're pushing through there. Obviously, some of the challenges do emerge with AI, which we see coming up quite highly. In the UK, France, Germany, privacy of companies' data when using AI tools, and this is coming from our IT buyers survey, is a massive challenge there. So they're all focused on how do we stop the data within our company going out there. It's fascinating when we look at this from a German perspective that accidental breaking of customer privacy and protection regulations comes up very highly there, which we haven't seen in other markets as much. We obviously see a lot of data sovereignty in the German market, and very interesting to see that coming up so highly there. In France, a country where there's a lot more focus around workers' rights and the cost of replacing workers due to redundancy is very high. A lot of French IT people are very worried about how AI is going to lose key skills internally, with people disappearing and being replaced by AI. I think it's interesting. That comes up around all of this is employees using AI improperly. When we did a survey last year looking at how people are using AI, one of the things we see a lot is businesses building AI policies to make sure the policies they're using are not breaking any customer data, but also not breaking any company data. So making sure employees are up to date with that is a big concern for businesses as well. So what does this mean for service providers? And just to finish off and wrap up all of those insights there, obviously the UCaaS market's growing really quickly. It's becoming more competitive and going to be growing very fast over the next 5 years. So now is the time to make sure that you've got the right platform in place and the right products in place, that you can deliver good revenue and good margin going forward. The ability to differentiate yourself from the competition is going to become harder and harder. So you've got to make sure you're finding a platform which is different and that you can really build off and use your own brand as the key differentiator there. And AI is not just a future trend, but it's here now. And we're starting to see that come more and more into the market. So a big thing to look out for is how AI is going to enable things and change things going forward in the future. So without further ado, I'd like to say thank you all for listening to myself, and I'm going to be handing over to Brian Gregory from Intermedia, who's going to be talking through a little bit around what Intermedia are doing in this space and how they're enabling service providers to really differentiate and build in the future. So over to you, Brian.
Oh, thank you, Dom. Appreciate it. So yeah, again, I'm Brian Gregory. I am Director of Product Marketing for Intermedia's Service Provider Initiative. So everything that we're doing into the service provider channel is, from a product marketing perspective, is my responsibility. I've been in this market for a long time. I've been, I was at Sprint, I was at Metaswitch, I was at Ribbon, I was at Edgewater Networks. I've seen it on the equipment side, I've seen it on the service provider side. So now at Intermedia, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about, I could take this presentation a number of different ways, and I decided to be a little more, what's the word? Contrarian, not going heavily into feeds and product elements, but let's go into probably some of the decisions that you guys are looking at today around your product portfolio and maybe directions that you're evaluating. So let me share some slides here. I can manage this properly. Share. Dom, hopefully that worked okay.
Excellent. You're in. Yeah, that worked perfectly.
I am in. Awesome. I'm going to start with the mission statement, elevator speech, whatever you want to call it. So I think uh, it's sort of relevant. I call this sort of our Jerry Maguire sort of presentation, right? So what is Intermedia doing from the service provider space? So you obviously, most of you are using traditional hardware-based UC solutions. We want to move that to a cloud-based solutions. A big part of that is to remove CapEx, help you compete in the business market, making good margins, and using your brand. So that's really what it comes down to. So let me show you just, here's some screenshots around our portfolio and the portfolio elements. Intermedia offers a full suite unified communications and contact center platform, fully integrated. A lot of our customers that are using contact center are not monolithic type accounts. They want to be able to tap into the rest of the industry. So rest of the business. So we've invested a lot in making those two products seem as seamless as possible. So UC and CC work seamlessly. This is a proprietary based platform. It's not based on any other platform. It's you can see, this is, I kind of look at this as sort of like the table stakes Venn diagram, right? We have a full up UC platform, fully brandable by our service provider partners. In a little bit, I'm going to share a couple of differentiators. Dom talked a little bit about service providers and differentiation. So I got 3 or 4 slides towards the end where I'm going to talk about how we differentiate this portfolio. But suffice to say, I guess I should say one other thing about the portfolio is, our Intermedia's focus is all about the channel partner, the service provider channel partners, and our other various partnerships. We have probably 90% of our business comes through the channel. So we've done a tremendous amount of work making sure that everything that you see here, as well as everything behind the scenes, all of the provisioning, ordering, customer care, everything that's associated with supporting a product end to end is smooth and seamless from a channel partner perspective. So just wanted to leave that with you. We see this market a little bit differently. We don't have a huge retail presence. We're really focused on the channel partner. So here we are, big upheaval going on in the marketplace. I worked at Metaswitch. I left there probably 7, 8 years ago. Big change with Microsoft and Metaswitch, a big technology transition that really Microsoft is forcing some of their service provider customers to take a look at, right? This is, they have eliminated a number of products. They've laid off staff. There may be a future sale here. We don't know. We saw a similar thing, slightly different with Cisco and BroadSoft a few years back. Cisco kind of pushing more of their accounts towards reselling WebEx as opposed to selling a private label solution. So, I think the net of that is that service providers are looking at what their options are. And it's truly like a transitional point in time where service providers will probably need to leave their historical feature server, call feature server, and look at other solutions. I see these 3 things on the left as kind of being the major decision blocks, right? There's the status quo, or kind of continuing on with what you have for as long as possible. You could look at bringing another feature server into the mix, or, spoiler alert here, look to the cloud. And certainly Intermedia as a cloud provider sees that as the most attractive options. So I do want to talk about these first 2 options in a little more depth, because we see a lot of our customers that are looking at UC and, particularly evaluating the status quo. And, what I mean by status quo is maybe continuing on with the existing infrastructure, but perhaps putting a new soft phone out in front as kind of the presentation layer of your unified communications product. As I look at that, I think it's certainly an attractive option from a cost perspective, right? You're not changing any of your underlying capabilities, but really you're just polishing up what the customer's seeing. And there's really not a lot of innovation that's taking place. So, as I kind of evaluate the risks to that status quo approach, right? Pace of innovation is huge, right? You are not getting the level of, just putting a new soft client out there is not getting you a lot of innovation behind the scenes. You're using your existing platform that is, in a very highly competitive market, opens you up to a significant amount of competitive risk. You can kind of see here on the right, I did borrow this information from you, Dom, in terms of strategic initiatives. Integrating, as Dom mentioned a few minutes ago, integrating AI into the product portfolio is number one in at least this is US data. So, if you're not integrating AI into your UC platform, your contact center platform, you're really running the risk of having a competitor that has those things to come in behind you. Underlying vendor risk, certainly, Metaswitch, I'd be a little nervous if I was using them for support or tickets or things like that. That certainly could lead to outages and customer dissatisfaction. And then churn, loss of economic returns. I've spent a fair bit of time analyzing this sort of idea of churn and, how churn might impact the overall bottom line. But, as you think about the economics of the status quo position, continuing on with what you're doing, it really opens you up some serious cost risks. So I want to take you through just a couple of very high level slides on sort of some economics. So, I ran two scenarios here. One is a status quo, right? Continuing down that status quo path. Gross adds or growth, 5% a year, kind of continuing to grow the base, but churn is a little bit elevated, continuing to grow as the platform doesn't get invested in. So starting at 1.5% per month, growing to 2.5%. And I should say that is those get into very high churn levels. 1.5% per month, that's 20% of customer turnover. So if you're not growing your customer base by 20%, you're in effect losing customers. On the right, Intermedia numbers, we see very strong, from our partners, very strong gross add growth, continuing to grow their customer base. Our corporate churn level is 0.7%. So that is a advertised calculated number. Some of our channel partners see better numbers than that. But again, we're also investing in our platform continually. We're continuing to try to future-proof that platform so it's market competitive going forward. So our churn rate is not going to change over time in this model. So as I take this 5-year time horizon and start to analyze that, so here's what this starts to look like. Seat growth for Intermedia, basically 100%, a 2x growth of seats over that 5 years. So 10,000 seats in this example becomes 20,000. As you start looking at sort of the status quo, 10,000 starts to drop to like 4,000. So it's a considerable drop in numbers. Now, let's take this one step further, because I do hear this question a lot. It's like, well, I'm able to, with the soft phone, maybe I'm able to kind of do a very cost efficient way of upgrading my platform. So I call this the soft phone trap. And let me just show you some numbers. And let's go a little bit inside these numbers and take you one step further. So let's just use an example here. Sell price, you're selling in the marketplace, $30 a month. You buy a UCaaS seat, a white label UCaaS seat for 10, your margin's $20. You have 20,000 seats. That month, you made $400,000. That was your gross margin for that month. So that's the scenario that I built earlier, right? 25%, 7.7% churn. Let's take a look at this from a soft phone perspective. Sell price, $30. Let's call a soft phone $1. So let's just say you have all the licenses you need. You're running your data center for free. You got no cost behind the scenes. Soft phone's $1. So now you're making $29 in margin. but you only have 4,000 seats. So your monthly margin is only about 116,000. And that, what does that look like? That's because you're only growing your platform at 12%. Or pardon me, negative 12%. Now, let's look at this another way. So what do I need to do to make the same amount of money as this case on the left? So we have this case on the left, a UCaaS seat at $10. Over here, the soft phone's $1 a month, no other cost. Let's make this very simple. All right, that same monthly margin, how many seats do you need to have? Well, nearly 14,000. You've got to do a lot of things right. And what does that 14,000 seats translate into? That translates into a 15% growth rate and 0.7% churn. So, as I look at these numbers and make sense of them, I think there's just a lot of concern around, putting a new face on the product, a new skin, a new presentation layer on the product, and expecting that product to continue to grow in the marketplace, particularly as how competitive and how new components and new features are just rolling into this portfolio continually. So some food for thought, some numbers to think about as you look at maybe your next phase of investment in your UC platform. So let me talk a little bit about that feature server example, right? Because I think feature server is attractive because it's a well-worn model. Service providers have been doing this for years. They understand the operations, they understand the cost model, resources pretty much can step into the existing roles or can retain the roles that they had before. So it's a very attractive market, just to continue on. Here's the pitfalls that I see with that approach. One, and I've seen this a lot with Metaswitch accounts when I was there, when I worked at a service provider, speed of deployment, right? You're basically, I call the feature server now the DIY approach, right? You're doing it yourself. And speed of deployment is, you the service provider, the onus is on you to just continue to make upgrades, to put patches, to put features. And I've seen this time and time again where you get behind and you're just not updating your platform as quickly as you need to be. Economies of scale, right? A cloud-based platform is just, hyper efficient as compared to a do-it-yourself. That's why we've seen over the last 10, 15 years, so much of this industry across so many different product categories has moved to the cloud. And I think seat licensing cost is super inefficient. So, at Metaswitch and in BroadSoft similarly, you sold in this perpetual software license. Well, we saw that, heck, people would buy 2 years of licenses up front. Well, you think about the inventory holding costs of 2 years of licenses that sit on the shelf, and just the inefficiency around that. It's just not a great way to buy a product. It's just money that's being put on the shelf, and it could be used for something else. So, like I said, I've done a lot of spreadsheeting and a lot of analysis around this. And if you would like, I'd be happy to look at your individual case. I'm going to show you here just a high-level comparison. And what I've done here in this comparison is say, and this could be, looking at a new feature server or looking at your current environment. I didn't want to put any sunk costs or anything like that into this. So I'm just considering, hey, I'm going to continue to run a feature server. And if I take all those costs that I have and I take, sort of some fixed costs and try to turn them into a monthly cost, what does that look like? And I put them into these 4 categories, right? Licensing. I already talked about perpetual software licensing. Maintenance, it's advertised at 10% a month, but it's really more like 15 to 20% a month because you're paying maintenance on what? You're paying the maintenance on the list price. You're not paying on the discounted price of the perpetual license. That's expensive. I already talked about inventory holding costs. That's easily another 10 to 15% on top of that, because you calculate into your cost of capital and how that bakes into holding money on the shelf where you could be spending it elsewhere. That kind of cost per seat per month for feature server is easily $250 to $5 a month, easily, when you start looking at all the costs associated with just the feature licenses themselves. Data center gets expensive as well. if you are using VMware, who was bought by Broadcom, there's a lawsuit with AT&T today about hypervisor licenses and the changing cost with hypervisors. It's expensive. You have to have, not only that, you have to have power, co-location, to run a rack of equipment these days is easily $2,000 to $3,000 a month just in power. You have to do capacity. And again, no sunk costs here, just upgrades, refreshes, things like that. Labor, when you start doing the math on that, easily $3 to $5, $6 per month just in running that data center per seat per month. Customer care, in the case of Intermedia, we pretty much do tier 2, tier 3 support. We don't talk directly to your customers, but we do all of the research behind the scenes and solve, open, close tickets and do all the troubleshooting. That's a cost savings as well, 30 to 70 cents. E911 in our offer, we include that. That's a monthly cost. So when you start baking all this into the cost equation, you could easily get to $6 to $12 per month per seat. So, and that's the DIY approach, right? So as you start to compare that against maybe a UCaaS or an as a service monthly service fee, it really doesn't look so bad, right? It's really pretty much right in the ballpark of what a white label UCaaS seat costs today. So moving to the cloud, this is really our horse in this race, right? We really feel like this is the optimal approach. I hear a lot about future proofing, and it's impossible to future proof because we have no idea what's going to happen. But certainly having a cloud-based approach gives you as much flexibility as possible, right? Why? Continual innovation, continually innovating this platform. We're continually bringing out some new solutions. I'm going to talk about a few of those in a minute here. I believe there's cost savings here. I believe just the fact that you no longer need to do a lot of different things, just in and of itself gives you some economic benefits. Branding flexibility. We are channel first. We want your brand out there. Nobody sees the Intermedia brand as you are going to market showing our solution. And perfect cost alignment. This is what I love, right? You do not pay for a seat until you actually make a sale and start to implement that seat. So you're already getting money when you're starting to pay for a seat. So you have perfect cost alignment. This is, again, outsourcing the platform. This is a slide that we use in our pitch deck to customers. And really, service providers have the benefit because they've created this trusted advisor relationship with customers, right? You do selling, customer turn up, customer relationships very, very well. The idea with a cloud-based, a white label solution, from a company like Intermedia, we are focused on your success. We are doing everything behind the scenes to get you into space, right? We have all the integration, we have all the device certifications, provisioning, shipping, fulfillment. We also have a huge library of marketing content. We have sales engineers that overlay you, can help you close deals. So we are, this is truly a shared success model where we're focused on your success. You're focused on supporting your customers. So let me segue into, Dom talked a little bit about differentiation. So I wanted to add a couple of slides about how Intermedia is looking to differentiate our offers from the customer, from our competitors, because this is an extremely competitive market. I'm going to focus on 4 things. AI, Dom talked a lot about AI, our archiving platform, and a little old SMS, MMS. It's a great little add-on that not a lot of people are doing in this market. And of course, Teams, or the 800-pound gorilla of unified communications, and how we, our market strategy around Teams. So first, let me talk a little bit about AI. We have been doing AI a lot, I should say that this is a major level of investment for Intermedia to have an AI solutions across both our UC and contact center platforms. We just launched, you see this large screen on the right, is meeting notes and action item So this is, you're doing a conference, a meeting. AI can now do a summarization of that meeting and give you action items and a full transcript. You can see some of the capabilities that we have about just taking long strings of conversation and bringing those into a quick summary of a call. Like you can see we have a lot of capabilities rolling into our contact center platform. And the next level of that is to have actual chat bots that are AI driven. So as your customer calls in, both either call or a chat session, have an actual session with that person that is pulling data from your repository of technical information and answering questions. And I should say, this is a service that you can roll out to your customers. The next thing I want to talk about is archiving. And we really call this business intelligence, right? Because this is not just call recording, right? This is having a repository, a searchable repository of every last element of communication that goes on in your business. So as you're selling this to a law firm or a healthcare provider or a financial services company, I mean, this is a regulatory element, right? We're actually seeing a lot of business with non-regulated industries because they just want a record and a repository of all the information so they can look backwards and see all of the things that's going on in their business. Certainly, there's some HR benefits to that, so you can look at things that were said or what have you. But just having the ability to have a look back of all the information flow in your business from a communication perspective is highly valuable. And from you as service provider selling this solution, right? This is a great additive to a monthly recurring, right? It's a 10, 15, 20%, depending on the retention period of costs. And we include 30 days free of archiving into every UCaaS seat today. So they can test the waters and see if it's something that they want to add and have a full up library and repository of information. SMS, customers prefer to do SMS. We have a terrific platform around SMS. Every seat has SMS and MMS integration. So if it's a customer care person, they can have conversations with individual customers. We also have this at a corporate messaging level. So you can have corporate messaging seats where you basically can put the corporate number out there. They can text into that number, and you can just manage communications. You can see any frontline worker has a high level of value here with integrating MMS, SMS into their business flow. And then lastly, we just launched our what we call 4 Teams Advanced platform. So Ascend is our service provider brand. So what is Teams Advanced? So this is an integrated PBX solution, SMS solution, call capability solution that you can sell to your Teams customers. Fully embedded with Teams, no middleware, no licenses from Microsoft. You are integrating the Intermedia PBX, I should say your PBX, into Teams. It's a superior PBX environment. All the capabilities with SMS and MMS come along for the ride. And I think about where the market is around selling, the service provider market is selling Operator Connect or direct routing. That's a very SIP trunking oriented, $2, $3, $4 per user per month kind of revenue stream. This sells for upwards of $20 per month. So you now have the ability to sell a much higher value solution into your Teams customers, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of uptake. And we've just launched this at the end of July, I should say. So out of the box solution that you can start selling into your Teams base immediately. So as I wind up on Intermedia, I put kind of put in these 4 big columns, right? Best in class product, keeps you competitive, continually investing, continuing to grow this portfolio and make it better and better over time. We have a channel first mentality. We want you to have your brand. You have the best relationship with your customers. We want your brand out front. Carrier grade performance. We have a best in class carrier grade solution that translates into a very positive customer experience. And then world-class support. I haven't even mentioned that we use JD Power as a third-party research firm for our technical support, and we have been certified multiple times. So with that, I thank you, and Dom, I guess I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much for that. Fascinating to see what you guys are doing at Intermedia, and I hope everyone listening has got a great insight into how and why they and where they can work with you guys. So thank you so much for that, Brian. I'd like to say thank you to everyone for attending. It's been a great session, and really pleased that you could all join us today. If anyone's got any questions, please let us know in the chat, or follow up with myself or Brian. We'll be sending over all the details of everything we've discussed today later on. And I'd like to say thank you so much for everyone for joining. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.